Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I will be doing a prediction PvP solo shuffle tier list. There are huge changes coming to PvP, and I wanted to share my thoughts on where the specializations could be landing in terms of power when the reset comes in tomorrow. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with changes and news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, Affliction Warlocks, you are seeing changes to your Soul Rot. You're seeing buffs to the Backlash Dispel of Unstable Affliction, but honestly, in Solo Shuffle, I don't think that's going to do a lot for you. You are situationally very powerful, depending on if you can get a lot of casters in your lobby, but melee DPS are very prevalent right now, and I'm really not seeing that change. So for me, I think Affliction is probably going to be coming in a little bit lower than I had previously ranked it. I'm putting it at about a B+. Now, if you're one of the top level warlocks out there, I think you can make this specialization work, but you're gonna have to work a lot harder. Yeah, it's mostly going to be melee DPS lobbies that are really difficult for you, Windwalkers and Demon Hunters, and those specs I think are still going to be really strong. Arcane Mage, this one's got a lot more mobility than Affliction, but you can get bad lobbies, things like BM Hunters, Marksmanship Hunters, which are likely still going to be really strong. And I think it's, those types of compositions. Shamans, fortunately, you do benefit from Ellie Shamans getting nerfed, and Ellie Shamans are getting pretty hefty nerf coming in here, but Resto Shaman could be better on this patch. I think you're probably still going to come in at about an A, probably one of the better mage specializations for Solo Shuffle. You have the ability to just solo carry. You're decently well-rounded and versatile, but again, this is going to be a skill specialization. If you're new to this or trying out, it's going to feel terrible. You're going to have to develop some mastery on the specialization before you really start to feel as to where it's going to be ranked here on the tier. Arms Warrior, I think, is a fantastic specialization. You can get rough lobbies. Again, mages tend to be your rough situation where you're getting spam rooted and hunters. But when you're getting pet lobbies like Demo Warlocks and Holy Death Knights, which are really common right now, you are going to absolutely just crush it. You're doing so much damage. I've been having the most fun on my warrior probably of any specialization that I'm currently playing right now. Honestly, the spec is really, or just the patch right now is really fun. If they've got the MMR tuned up, which I think it's been improving, my queues have been a lot faster, I think the game is actually gonna be in a really good spot. For me, I actually think warrior is about A+. I really like the way that it's playing at the moment. Assassination Rogue, this is a super underrated one. We don't see a lot of it because Subtlety Rogue is just taking the main stage right now, but Assassination Rogue is absolutely destroying it. I got a lobby yesterday. I had Sea-Doo healing in it, and then an Obsidian Legend Paladin healing, and this Assassination Rogue was just running them down every game, and I've not seen a spec be able to do that. Not a single spec has just been able to run down BlizzCon champion level healers, doing more damage than balanced druids, and absolutely destroying everything. So Assassination Rogue is really sleeper. Really, really, really sleeper. Its survivability is why I'm not putting it on S tier. But it is really sleeper. It is really powerful. I honestly kind of want to try playing it after seeing the performance that I've seen for it. Balanced Druid, this one I'm still putting up onto S tier. I think its versatility, its crowd control. If you're playing at the highest level or even moderately high level, you're going to be able to feel like you can carry on the specialization. I've really been liking it when I'm playing it. Rough lobbies for you are going to be Shadow Priest situations. This can really only be exacerbated if you have other casters, like an Aflock Shadow Priest lobby. But Shadow Priest and Aflocks aren't super popular, so you're probably going to feel more powerful than not. I'm going to be uploading guides on how to deal with melee cleaves. I got a lobby yesterday that was all melee cleave, and so if you want to stay up to date with information like that related to guides, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. But Boomkin, still really versatile, tons of burst damage, really good. Beast Mastery Hunter, this is a really solid spec. It does so much damage at the moment. Your main problem is going to be classes that can root your pets and players that are aware of that and use AoE crowd control, so things like mages and druids, and even priests to an extent, fearing your pets and void tendrils on your pets. If players are playing around your pets, it can be difficult to get pressure going, but defense is the main thing I think that holds this one back for me. Otherwise I would put it on S. I think it's probably going to feel more like an A+. It just does an insane amount of damage. You play Diamond Ice Traps to synergize with classes that are going to break your trap, which you're probably going to play more often than not. You got Tranquilizing Darts, which is really good into Resto Druids. Resto Druids are probably not going anywhere as far as being the strongest healer, so you've got tools to deal with the strongest healers. You got decent synergies. You just got tons of damage. Only weakness would be you're definitely squishier than some other options, and you don't really have a lot of like stuns to be able to close out the game, although sometimes it's not necessary. You can just kind of run around and do damage. Blood Death Knight, honestly, the spec is probably like kind of mid. I mean, it's probably, you probably make it work. The tank specs are actually surprisingly good, but if you were really looking to push like high rating and maybe even getting elite sets, it's gonna be a lot more difficult on tank specs. I wouldn't recommend it. Demonology Warlock, melee lobbies again gonna be rough for you, but unlike Affliction, I think having Axe Toss and having powerful crowd controls and burst damage enables you the ability to close games that Affliction can't. And I think it's still likely going to be the case here for Demonology. I kind of want to put you on like A plus or A. Maybe we'll put you on A for now, and we'll reconsider it. But you're definitely going to feel stronger than Affliction due to the fact that you have so much hard crowd control, and hard crowd control is so valuable in the bracket. Destruction Warlock, you are receiving some nerfs to your main abilities, but they're not nerfing the thing that's actually really broken, which is the Flame Rift. They buffed your set bonus, and your Flame Rift, like when you proc those, is going to be like 17-20% of your damage, shoots through pillars, seemingly has unlimited range. So the Rift playstyle with the Immolate, but I think the main thing that's probably going to bring you down is going to be the Flashpoint nerf. Your haste is getting lowered, although the stats are so high that like this Flashpoint nerf might be something that really negatively impacts you next expansion or next patch, depending on what the item level is for the next patch. But initially your baseline haste is so high that it's probably not going to be too big of a deal. So I kind of want to feel like you're probably going to end up still being around in the same spot as you were previously, but I do think the Flashpoint lowering your chance to proc Immolates and procking Rifts is probably going to be what's felt more than the 5% Shadowburn nerf or the 5% Chaos Bolt nerf, but it's probably still going to be really good. Devastation Evoker, we're probably got to bump specs up here, man, when I'm thinking about this, because Devastation Evoker is actually startlingly good. It seems like you basically have Ray of Frost as Disintegrate. You just, every time you're pressing it, it's like half someone's health. It does a remarkable amount of damage. You're getting a stamina buff with the main stat nerf. You're probably less likely to get 100-0'd by Subtlety Rogues. So Subtlety Rogue 100-0 starts to dissipate. Like Devastation Evoker is going to be an absolute monster. It tears up melee DPS, which are really popular at the lower end of the bracket. So if you're trying to climb at the lower end to the mid range, you're gonna feel really strong. I think it starts to struggle at the top end where you get a lot of casters, and your limited range will start feeling like a liability. But in melee lobbies, and melee are just generally more popular than range, so you're more likely to get those lobbies. It's gonna feel really good. Probably somewhere in here. I don't feel comfortable. I feel like Demonology and Destro are better than Arcane, so I'm going to bump these guys up a slot. I don't feel comfortable putting these guys in the same tier. Discipline Priest and Solo Shuffle, this is still going to be an S tier specialization. Just really good damage output, really good healing output, really fun to play right now, really well-rounded, definitely a strong spec. I've been performing really well on this one personally, and I've seen it time and time again. It's just a really good spec at the moment. Ellie Shaman, this is going to be a hot contender on where it's ranking. So they're nerfing a lot of things to do with the Lava Burst build and nerfing the main stat. I think your overall damage is going to feel like it's going down significantly. They're targeting Primordial Waves cooldown, which is going to limit how many Lava Bursts you're proccing, which is going to limit how many Ascendances you're getting. I could see it hitting it pretty hard. You do struggle with melee DPS, but I think at higher ratings, when you start to learn how to use Unleash Shield and Thunderstorm and Frost Shock Root, that melee DPS tend to be easier to deal with. It becomes rogues, I think, that are a lot more difficult, specifically. I'm going to be putting you here for now, a little bit lower than the other specializations. Probably the best of the A, though, just because the rotation is so easy to pull off, and it's pretty undisruptible. Yeah, probably the best of the A, but I think you're likely going to feel like you're a bit weaker on this patch. Enhancement Shaman, now this one is actually really good. Like remarkably good. I think moving into this patch, they're making you more tanky, giving you more off heals, but Shuffle, I think it could still be hard for you. Mostly due to synergy, not too great in caster lobbies. If you get melee lobbies, maybe you're going to be a lot better now that you're a little bit more beefy, and maybe the magic damage reduction talent might be more desirable, and you're going to be able to push in aggressively. But I think at Shuffle, you end up kind of getting stranded on mobility, but you're definitely better than where you were. I think I had you ranked down here somewhere before. You're improving, and you could be better than this. Again, this is a prediction. I'm hesitating to rank you much higher because I think caster lobbies will still likely be very difficult for you, but you're definitely a lot better than you were previously. Feral Druid, you're getting a couple healing buffs similar to Enhancement. You've got benefits of having Mortal Wounds and Cyclone, though, and way better mobility. So I think Feral's probably going to feel better than Enhancement and Shuffle because it's going to give it more options in terms of compositions. I've seen a lot of Ferals succeeding. You got to be really slippery on this spec and know how to pick your moments on attacking and running away, because if you don't run away at the right moment, you're dead, and if you're not attacking at the right moment, you're not getting pressure. So it's a really tactical specialization, way harder to play in my mind than like Arms Warrior Asarogue, where it's mostly just zug, keep pushing forward, kidney shot, and kill. Feral's got a lot more tactical decision making involved with it, which makes it harder to perform on, and I think it's going to feel still a little bit weaker than the amount of pressure that these specializations are going to be able to put up in solo shuffle. Fire Mage, I think the spec's pretty tough to do well with at the moment in shuffle. You're just really squishy. Hunters are getting mega buffed. And they're lowering the burst potential with the main stat nerf coming down, so you're probably going to feel that even more so on Fire Mage. If you can sit back and free cast, you can definitely get a lot of momentum, but with specs that are likely going to be powerful, I think you're going to really struggle. I think Fire Mage is definitely going to feel a lot squishier than normal. Frost Mage, this is a really tough one because I think it's really close to Arcane. I think Frost has a huge potential at the moment with Frostbomb builds right now. You can just absolutely erase somebody. Baiting Dispels with Polymorph and then going for Frostbomb so it can't be dispelled is like a common play that I'm seeing a lot right now, and then combo it with Glacial Spike. I want to say it's about the same as Arcane. Very close, if not. In shuffle at the moment, just based on its burst damage, and the snare potential against melee DPS is really going to be powerful at low to mid rating, but even at high rating against casters, you've got a lot of damage output that you can get on the spec. Frost Decay, it's doing better. I've seen a couple of Frost Decays. I've queued with a couple of Frost Decays. You're going to do really well in melee cleave lobbies, I think, but again, it's the caster lobbies where you're going to really struggle. Very similar to Enhance. So I'm kind of putting you maybe where Enhance is roughly. You don't get the off support that Enhance gets, or the flexibility of Enhance though. So maybe it's more fair to put it here. It's definitely a lot better than D from what I've seen so far for it, but it's not going to perform as well as some of the top level specs, I don't think, just because it's not, you know, as versatile. You're really limited. Fury Warrior is startlingly good, and I still don't see enough of them honestly for how good it is. Like, this spec is really good. It is doing insane amounts of DPS. I've seen sometimes like upwards of like 200 to 300,000 DPS. Like, it is doing really good. Lobbies that are gonna be rough for you again are Mage and Hunter, very similar to Warrior. When you're getting spam root traps, scatter rooted, and just not able to move your character around. Fury gets a little bit extra mobility though than Arms through honor talents. Where do I want to put this? I feel like this spec is super underrated. I need to start playing it more. I've been playing my Arms. I've just been loving Arms so much that I don't even really want to try Fury right now. But I feel like Fury is like got to be somewhere up here with Essa Rogue. It is really good after the changes that they've made to it. Guardian Druid, you know, I made a video talking about it. I think, you know, it's probably one of the better tanks, but it's still going to be really tough to climb as a tank. What I've noticed, the problem with tank specs, honestly, at the moment is that people will just troll you and not try because they don't want you to win because you're a tank. So you're inherently, the system is against you. I would not recommend it, but it's got a lot of crowd control. I honestly think that it's like a better Feral Druid, at least in the current patch. Next patch, maybe not with how much healing we're going to see on regrowth, but in the current patch, I actually think it was a better Feral Druid. Demon Hunter, I think this is still probably going to feel like an S tier spec in solo shuffle. It's just really versatile, truck tons of damage, lots of personal defensives and utility for its teammates. As long as you're using the entire kit, you're going to feel strong on this. There's a lot of Demon Hunter rerollers I see that still don't even respec for reverse magic and stuff, but if you're fully using the extent of this class, I think it's still going to feel like an S tier spec, but maybe not the best melee DPS, but definitely really strong. Holy Priest, you know, I misread the patch notes. I thought that you guys were getting a mana buff. You're not. And they went out of their way to not give you a 3% healing buff. I don't understand why that. Like, Red Paladins got a 3% damage buff, but Holy Priest couldn't get a 3% healing buff. Every time I play Holy Priest, I'm miserable. Now, I don't have the 4-piece bonus, which is likely going to be a big contributor to your overall healing. So I'm going to give it a little bit higher of a ranking than I really want to give it, because I think it's definitely like the worst healer in the game. For Shuffle, you just run out of mana faster, way faster than everybody else. Really tough to stay ahead of the damage. You're also just a liability to die in a lot of cases. You just can get randomly attacked and die. It's just everything about the spec feels weak. The only advantages you have is stun and like instant cast Holy Fire pressure. But that burst damage might be less valuable now that they're lowering main stat of DPS. I think Holy Priest is really tough. Now, Holy Paladin was doing really well. They're nerfing its mana, but its mana, again, I was playing games against Paladins, Holy Priest. I'd be Paladin is full mana after like a 3-minute game. So it, you know, like a 10% nerf to their mana regen, is that really going to equate to the difference of being full to 0? It's like maybe you're 70% instead of 100. I think Holy Paladin is probably still going to be really good. You are susceptible to crowd control, susceptible to getting attacked, I think, more than other healers, which can be you know, why it's a little bit lower of a ranking. But you do really good in rogue lobbies and hunter lobbies, unlike a lot of other healers. Probably one of the best for those situations. And, you know, hunter specs are doing really good right now. Rogue specs are doing really good right now. So you're gonna get a lot of situations where you do feel good. and I don't think the mana thing is really going to mean too much. Marksmanship Hunter, buffs to aim shot, buffs to rapid fire, but lowered overall main stat. So you probably end up at about the same, but you're still ahead of the other people who didn't get compensated for the overall main stat nerf. Still a lot squishier. I think the damage is harder to get off. I'm putting you here like on the A tier. I think it's easier to play than these specs. And if you get these mages, you're definitely going to crush it in any sort of clothy situation. But if you're getting run down by these melee DPS, I think you're still going to have some struggles staying alive. Mistweaver Monk, I think Mistweaver Monk is still going to be really good in Shuffle. If you can flex between playing Fistweaver and Caster and get a gear set for both, I think you're going to feel really good because you can just absolutely counter lobbies flexing between those two different builds. Caster dot classes, Fistweave, Melee Cleave, Max Range, Caster, Mistweaver. I think Mistweaver is still going to feel really good. Again, susceptible to crowd control. As Fistweaver, you can get attacked against Melee Cleaves if you're not able to flex between the builds, so you're a little bit weaker than Disc Priest in that sense. Disc Priest is really good because you basically can't die. It's I think it's maybe the only healer, maybe Shaman, but Disc is really tough to kill. It's like very rare that I see a Disc Priest ever being a target. Outlaw Rogue, really good specialization. I think it's going to feel even better with overall burst coming down. I'm actually putting this on S tier. It has a ton of crowd control, a ton of overall sustain damage. Really going to be good if burst damage comes down whatsoever in terms of just controlling lobbies. I think it's a really good, super underrated spec. Preservation Evoker, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to put this one below Holy Priest. Short range, really tough. Limited mana pool. You're a target for a lot of compositions. It's just not feeling too great. Now, maybe the overall main stat nerf makes you feel a little bit better, but we're not seeing like a huge amount of compensation towards you in terms of viability, so I think it's probably still going to be a struggle. Prot Warrior, again, probably not a good recommendation to play tanks. Definitely not Prot Paladin. Your Q times are going to be infinitely small. It's going to be really tough to climb. Resto Shaman, your Healing Tide's getting a little bit more HP. Main stat nerf's coming down. Maybe Healing Tide Totem. I feel like if you don't put the Healing Tide in a good spot, it's just going to die anyways, even if it has more HP. But Resto Shaman is definitely not like awful. I'd say it's its limitations are its positional cooldowns. But you get lobbies where you can feel really good. Like caster situations, you're gonna be one of the best healers. So I want to say that you're like either kind of close to Paladin or just underneath it. And this is really lobby. Like if you get a Hunter lobby, Paladin's gonna crush you. Get a caster lobby, you're gonna crush like most other healers. So it's hit or miss with this one. But definitely gonna be feeling a little bit better, I think, with burst coming down. Resto Druid still probably the best healer in the game. Putting it up here with Disc Priest, just remarkably high throughput, and you're basically, again, really tough to take down, although you are targeted quite a bit, but mostly because you can just sit 80 yards away and outlast pretty much any other healer. Retribution Paladin, we're throwing this up onto the A tier, I think, for now. You're getting a 3% damage buff. It's still a really good top level performer. I think you can get rough situations with mages, but mages are probably going to get kept in check with how good hunters are a lot. With Ellie's coming down, that's better for you. I think A or A plus is probably where I would be putting Ret. A little bit less finishing power than these specs on their own probably would be the main thing that I'd be saying is dragging it down to A. Shadow Priest, you're just kind of good but not amazing. I still think like Psyfiend and Mind Games is a really good way to try and control and end a match, but it can be really tough to close games out. I think in the hands of the best players, like this spec is actually really good. This is like do I really want to put it on B plus? I feel like with how warriors are, windwalkers, rogues, like there's so many melee that are just going to constantly stun lock you, keep you under control, that this is probably a fair ranking for it. You got to play really out of your mind to make this spec work, but if you do, you can. So it's somewhere between B plus and A. Like somewhere here. This is a really tough one for me, but we'll leave it here for now. Subtlety Rogue, I still think this is going to be S tier. I don't know if it's going to be the best. This is a really tough ring, whether or not Outlaw is the best after all the changes come through, or Subtlety, but like Subtlety Rogues were like overkilling people by like 3 health bars. So, a little bit of an overall main stat and Eviscerate nerf. It's like, okay, are you just killing 2 health bars now instead of 3? Like, you're probably not just going to bulldoze people over like you were through all their defensives, but if you're still, a top-level rogue, you're probably going to be fine. Survival Hunter, really tough to make work. If you're playing a tanky build, you can have some decent survivability, but you don't have a lot of synergy with a lot of other specs. You don't really have enough like raw overpowering damage to be able to just kind of swarm enemies and win that way. So I'm putting you on B plus. I think again, if you're like the absolute best cracked player at this, you can definitely make it work. But overall on the ladder, statistically, you're probably going to see the spec struggling more than not. Unholy Death Knight, definitely going to be benefiting from the overall damage reduction, so you can focus on sustain, swarming, overwhelming. Unholy, I want to say, is probably like A plus, somewhere in here with these guys. I think the main problem for Unholy is that you're kind of squishy, especially to these classes. That's the main thing holding down from S. You're going to get trained a lot and probably die in those situations, but you've got really good damage, really good control, really good momentum to be able to close and end a game. Vengeance Demon Hunter is probably the best tank, but again, I wouldn't recommend trying to really climb with a tank. Windwalker Monk, this is probably going to come as a surprise, but I actually think Windwalker is S tier. I think it was probably already S tier before this patch, and you're getting some damage buffs, and the overall main stat nerfs means that, less likely to get one-shot by these classes. But if you're really focused on your defense, picking your moment, this spec is just absolute raw powerhouse. Doesn't mean that I don't think that it should get a rework and be updated along the lines of the other specializations to focus more on sustain and less on burst, less reliability on only Serenity to get kills. But with the kit that it has, it's one of the best melee performers for sure by far. Augmentation Evoker, yeah, I would not recommend playing this one at the moment. This is really tough. Just doesn't seem to have the same type of pressure. Again, before it would one-shot with Upheaval, and now that it can't one-shot, it just doesn't have pressure on any of its other abilities. Kind of just underdeveloped at the moment. Not going to be a great pick, I'm imagining, continuing to move forward. But this is kind of my initial thoughts here on specializations. Prediction, again, moving in. I will update this tier list as it goes on. You can watch my stream live to see that testing phase go through. But I just wanted to give you guys my thoughts on how everything is unraveling and rolling out here for the reset. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.